Introduction. Cruise ships are often seen as floating paradises, luxury escapes where passengers can leave behind their worries and sail into adventure. But hidden beneath the glittering lights, fine dining, and tropical excursions lies a darker truth. Over the years, countless stories have emerged about mysterious disappearances, horrifying accidents, and chilling encounters on the open sea. These are the kinds of tales that rarely make it into glossy travel brochures, but once you hear them, you may never look at cruise vacations the same way again. Tonight, we'll be diving into 10 disturbing true cruise ship horror stories, real-life nightmares at sea that prove even in paradise, danger can lurk just beneath the surface. So, dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for some untold fears. Story 1. The Vanishing Newlywed. It was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. A young bride, only 26 years old, boarded a luxury cruise with her new husband. They had spent weeks planning every detail, eager to celebrate their marriage surrounded by ocean sunsets. But just 3 days into the voyage, she was gone. Security cameras last captured her walking down a hallway toward her cabin late at night, and then nothing. Her belongings were still neatly packed, her passport untouched. Her husband claimed he woke to find her missing. Some believed she may have fallen overboard, but others whispered darker theories, that someone had lured her away, or worse, that foul play had happened inside that cabin. Her body was never found. To this day, her disappearance remains unsolved, and the cruise line offered little more than condolences. Story 2. The Engine Room Fire. For over 3,000 passengers aboard a Caribbean-bound ship, it was supposed to be an ordinary evening. Then, in the dead of night, alarms shattered the silence. Smoke began pouring through the lower decks as flames erupted deep in the engine room. Crew members scrambled to contain the blaze, but the fire spread quickly. Terrified passengers gathered on deck as the power failed, plunging the ship into complete darkness. The fire was eventually extinguished, but not before causing massive damage and leaving thousands stranded at sea for days. No working toilets, dwindling food supplies, and unbearable heat. Many described it as a floating prison, with fear and desperation taking over as tempers flared and panic grew. Story 3. The Ghost Passenger. Several crew members on a Mediterranean cruise swore they had seen her. A woman in a long white dress, wandering the hallways late at night, always barefoot, always silent. At first, passengers dismissed it as a crew prank or a drunken tourist. But then, an unsettling discovery surfaced. Years earlier, a woman fitting that same description had fallen to her death from one of the upper decks. Ever since, her ghost has been spotted by staff and passengers alike, often lingering near the exact spot where she supposedly slipped. Some skeptics claim it's imagination, but others say her presence is far too real to deny. Story 4. The Mystery Illness Outbreak. Cruises are notorious for outbreaks, but one voyage became something far more sinister. Within 48 hours of departure, dozens of passengers began suffering severe stomach cramps, vomiting, and fever. Soon, hundreds were sick. The crew rushed to contain the illness, quarantining entire floors. But the ship was trapped at sea, far from port, and panic spread faster than the virus itself. With medical staff overwhelmed, passengers described horrifying conditions: vomit in hallways, overflowing bathrooms, and cries of suffering echoing through the night. By the time the ship reached land, nearly a third of all passengers had fallen ill. Many later claimed the cruise line had tried to downplay the outbreak to protect its reputation. Story 5. The Elevator Tragedy. One passenger thought it was just another ride back to his cabin. He stepped into an elevator, pressed the button, and waited. Moments later, screams erupted. The elevator had malfunctioned, plunging several floors before slamming to a stop. The passenger was trapped inside, crushed between the floors. Witnesses recalled the horrifying sounds of twisting metal and desperate cries. By the time emergency teams managed to pry the doors open, it was far too late. The incident shocked fellow passengers, who now stared nervously at every elevator door for the remainder of the voyage, unable to shake the memory of that sudden, violent tragedy. Story 6. The Overboard Child. Family vacations are supposed to be safe. But one couple's dream getaway became a nightmare when their young child slipped away from their sight. The boy had been playing near a railing, laughing with his siblings. Then in a matter of seconds, he was gone. Witnesses claim they saw a splash below. Panic erupted, and the crew initiated a man-overboard search, but the ship was massive, the waves unforgiving. Hours passed, hope dwindled. The search was eventually abandoned. The boy's parents never recovered, and passengers on board described an unshakable silence that lingered for the rest of the cruise. Story 7. The Midnight Intruder. She thought she had locked her cabin door. But sometime after midnight, she awoke to a shadow standing in her room. Before she could scream, the figure lunged. A terrifying struggle broke out in the darkness as she fought for her life. Somehow, she managed to escape and alert security, but the intruder vanished into the maze-like halls. Investigators suspected it may have been a crew member, though no one was ever identified. Passengers were horrified to learn that even on a cruise ship, supposedly secure and safe, strangers could gain access to private cabins in the dead of night. Story 8. The Rogue Wave. The ship had been sailing smoothly when suddenly, in the early hours of morning, it was struck by a massive wall of water, a rogue wave towering nearly 60 feet high. The force shattered windows, flooded hallways, and sent furniture flying. Passengers screamed as the ship tilted dangerously, alarms blaring. For minutes, it felt as though the ship would capsize. Somehow, it didn't, but the aftermath was devastating. Injuries, destroyed cabins, and terrified passengers who would never forget the sight of an unstoppable wall of water rising out of the Black Sea. Story 9. The crew member's disappearance. Cruise ship disappearances aren't limited to passengers. On one voyage, a popular young crew member vanished without a trace. Friends said they had seen him heading to his cabin after his shift. Hours later, he was gone. No sign of struggle, no goodbye. His belongings remained untouched. Some suspected suicide, others believed foul play, but with no body and no clear answers, his disappearance only fueled the unsettling truth. On the open sea, people can simply vanish, and never be seen again. Story 10. The Carnival of Chaos. Perhaps one of the most infamous cruise disasters in modern memory involved a ship that lost all power mid-voyage. For days, thousands of passengers were trapped in unsanitary conditions. Toilets backed up, food ran out, people were forced to sleep in hallways and eat cold rations. Some described it as a floating hell, a once luxurious trip turned into a survival nightmare. Lawsuits followed, but the trauma remained for those who had lived through it. For them, the sound of the ocean against the hull would never again bring peace, but instead, reminders of a nightmare at sea. Closing narration. Cruise ships may promise luxury, relaxation, and adventure. But as these disturbing true stories reveal, danger is never far when you're surrounded by endless ocean. From mysterious vanishings to natural disasters, from tragedies to hauntings, these tales remind us that the sea holds secrets that no captain can control. Next time you step onto a cruise ship, take a moment to look around. The laughter, the music, the shimmering lights, they may hide a darker reality. After all, paradise can turn into a nightmare in the blink of an eye.